Welcome to Carter's Country Club. This is episode one, a call to right action, and this is part three. My name is Ann Taylor Lashbrook-Wright, and I'm really glad you're here. Hey! Hopefully you've already listened to part one and part two. If you haven't, you want to go back and listen to those first. And I'm just going to keep rolling because I'm kind of limited in my time since I'm recording these through Keynote in order for the format not to change, at least what I've figured out so far. I've got to keep these kind of under 30 minutes and brief, so I'm slowly going through this very large amount of slides that I've created for episode one. All right, I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so yeah, again, if you are new to me, these are very old photos and some old, like vintage Lululemon. I only have old leftover Lululemon, couple pieces left. I would not buy things from that company because I don't think that they are moral and I don't align with their practices. Again, if you know me, then you know that my background is in Pilates. I was more of a contemporary Pilates teacher. I did do part of my I did do a classical certification, and now I find myself leaning into classical Pilates. But again, a conversation for another time. And I'm actually pretty excited. I got to take my son Carter to his first private Pilates lesson about a month ago, and we're going to go again this week. It is really the foundation of who I am. And as a mover, right? I started studying yoga and Pilates when I was in my teens, and I first got to take part and be on apparatus when I was 19 years old. So these images are from a hybrid Pilates studio in Encino, California, called Pilates Plus. I'm not even sure if the studio exists anymore. And that's the first generation of the Pro Former, now the Mega Former, which my teacher was Sebastian Legree, at least my contemporary teacher. And there's lots of information about Legree Fitness out there. That's not really the purpose of this, but I wanted to share within this episode just a little bit of my background because like I said, I come from this world of somatics, and maybe that's a new word for you, but this world of mindful movement. And I spent many years kind of frustrated with the current state of our world where people feel that the only mindful practice is yoga, that they kind of dismiss all this wealth of knowledge that exists in the world of somatics. But again, not the purpose of you know of this first episode. Yeah, this is me also many years ago, and kind of shows also the three different worlds that I lived in throughout the early 2000s. And so I worked as a personal trainer, which is where you see that headshot. And I worked as a health educator. And I did wear a white lab coat. And I traveled around the US doing biometric screenings for large corporations and giving, I worked as a phlebotomist, and then I would give health education to people based on their biometrics. So, kind of on an interesting side note, I now kind of question like, why were we taking the blood of all of these people? And where did that go? You know? But it also really informed how I looked at 2020 because during those years as a health educator, so I worked for this company from 2006 or 7 until 2013. So I traveled all over for many years. And HIPAA was a real thing, right? It's like now in 2020, there was no protection of your rights, of your health information. But at the time when I worked as a health educator, I couldn't even say someone's height out loud. I literally had to point to their height, not just their weight, but their height. Much less I couldn't tell, their cholesterol numbers or their blood glucose levels or any of that. And so that really kind of piqued my ear in 2020 when, you were supposed to divulge your health information, just to go into a fitness facility. Um, I thought that was really, really strange. And this image in the lower right hand corner is of one of the teams that I coached in mastery and transformational training. So, also, my background in the early 2000s was in the world of transformation. Specifically, I took the trainings through Landmark Education and I volunteered for them for a number of years. And then I went through the trainings in mastery and transformational training, which is based on the LifeSpring model. And then I volunteered for them for a number of years. The last time I went back and volunteered was in 2015. And so, as I mentioned in the part two, I was really into this like new age movement and really had been for a very long time. I started reading um, books like that in my early teens. I was raised in the Presbyterian church, but a I had a very interesting mentor through my teen years. He had us studying Carl Jung and Neil Donald Walsh. We did dream interpretation. We read Eckhart Tolle. It was really about consciousness, and that was really what we were looking into. Eventually, the Presbyterian Church USA, which is the governing body of the church that I went to, came in and dismantled our youth group. They, kind of cleaned house, if you will. And in my experience, they never came to a youth group meeting or anything that we were taking part in. But not only did the books and the education that my mentor was really teaching us at the time that informed who I was, um, but having the Presbyterian Church USA, that governing body, come in and shut down our entire program based on their assumptions. They assumed what was going on. They listened to some hearsay. They didn't approve of the books that we were reading. Things like Inner Work, and I already mentioned Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God, and The Power of Now, and all this other Jungian work. They didn't approve of that. They didn't approve of the conversations, that were going on. And, you know, it was really a shame. So that kind of rocked my world in my teens and really had me, move away from the church at that time. And I never really went back. And now it's kind of sad that youth group is very, very small. Um, and yeah, again, more points for another time. I want to keep moving forward. So, as I mentioned, I started practicing yoga when I was very young, and that was my world for a very long time. Like I mentioned in the in part two, I spent a lot of time rock climbing. That's in the Happy Boulders here. I think you can see my cursor. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't know. But this image on the left, upper right hand corner is in Rocky Mountain National Park, and the lower right hand corner is in Mancora, Peru. So for 2012, I was fortunate to be able to go down to Mancora. An owner of a studio needed to return to the States to renew her visa. So I got to go down and teach yoga and Pilates to this amazing group of young people that were kind of traveling through Mancora. Again, lots of that I could talk about Peru and my whole experience, but that's not really the purpose here. I want to just keep moving along. For breath is life, so if you breathe well, you will live long on earth. That's a Sanskrit proverb. And again, when the world shut down in 2020 and people were, wearing masks, I couldn't believe that the yoga world went right along with it, and Pilates and every other somatic practice that I could see. I mean, there were, maybe there were a handful of people in the country that didn't do that, but I saw it everywhere. That really seemed like that whole world took that on. And that's again where I started to kind of think, I think these people are kind of missing the point. Like maybe they didn't understand that. Maybe they didn't understand, that's our prana, that's our life force. And like I said, throughout the 2000s, I was kind of traveling around. I was really working to find my place. I left California. I think I said that in the previous one. Yeah. So I was born in Kentucky. In 2002, I moved out to, I lived in Hermosa Beach first and then lived around the west side of Los Angeles for many years. In 2009, I left Los Angeles to go to Tulum, Mexico to do a yoga teacher training. And I had decided to move to Colorado, which is this little teepee was in the back of this farm and Waldorf school where I lived in North Boulder. The lower image on the right is also in Rocky Mountain National Park. I was teaching Pilates in Estes Park, and so I got to spend a lot of time in Rocky Mountain National. And then the image on the right is the lake house of a good friend where I lived in North Georgia for a period of time. And so yeah, again, I was really seeking throughout, my 20s and really working to figure out where I belonged and what I wanted to do and what did I really want to teach because again, I couldn't I was really frustrated with, the world of yoga. Even though that's where I was living, that was kind of what I was teaching. But I started to study more and I started to really think, this was a practice that was by men for men. And although now I have maybe a very different view of masculine and feminine and I really see where the feminist movement was really hijacked and co-opted. I still feel very strongly that the physical practice of asana or postures was really designed on a man's pelvis. And for years I would like skirt that topic, right? I tried to like do this whole song and dance at the beginning of my classes about the biological male pelvis and biological female pelvis because I was exposed to non-binary people many years ago in California, and I really resonated with this conversation about gender, because I was like the classic tomboy. And then I was really frustrated by everybody taking on this practice that was really, kind of oppressive in a lot of ways. And if we look into the history of Ashtanga yoga, and Patabi Joyce and how he behaved, if we look into Iyengar and his body type and how he kind of put that on other people, and much less, I think many of you maybe have seen that Bikram documentary that, has been very popular for many years and his abuse. It was a very abusive practice. And so I really couldn't call what I was doing yoga. Although I look back at it now and I think, well, I really was, you know, practicing things in a pretty authentic way. Yogi, like looking at yoking and in union with myself. I really was seeking that. But but that wasn't my truth in my physical practice. And so I continued to kind of work to see what I could offer that would be authentic. I really didn't, want to just kind of call what I was doing yoga just because it was a buzzword. And so as I was seeking to figure out what I was there to teach, I fell in love with acro yoga, and that was really, part of my practice because I loved acrobatics and I loved people. This image on the left is from this project that my friend Jenna Phillips and I worked on for many years. She called her work Mission Possible. And when I started to do my first teacher trainings, Jenna and I partnered together and we're really looking to kind of bring the world of transformation and movement together. We really were thriving in community. And that still informs who I am. So in 2006, I started to call what I was doing beyond movement. And so, as I've kind of mentioned before, you can read it here, but I've been talking through it. I was traveling around. I was really trying to figure out what did I want to teach and what did I want to do. And so I thought it was more authentic if I called my practice beyond movement. And I came up with that because I really felt like we had to go beyond this, even this label of movement, as well as it. There was a nod to my musical theater background, and I don't always talk about that a lot. When I studied in university, I was a performing arts major. I loved musicals, and I kind of vacillated back and forth with like, am I a dance major? Am I a dance major with emphasis in, or am I a performing arts major with an emphasis in musical theater or in dance? What do I want to do? And so, but really, ultimately, I'm a dancer and I'm a mover, and so that's what I was doing my best to be authentic in who I was. And so I was teaching workshops, and then I felt that everybody was online, so I had to bring everything online. I taught all these teacher trainings and all of those things. And in 2015, before I got pregnant with Carter, I was back in school again, um, looking at how do I take what I've been doing in this somatic practice, in this mindful movement practice, and could I make it more like dance? Could I put this to music? Um, and then I got pregnant with Carter, and things changed. But what I will say is in 2020, when they basically said we had to go online, that doesn't work well for me, right? It never sets well if you tell me I have to do something. And so that was also a big part of why I removed myself from social media, was because I didn't want to be told that that's what I had to do. Now I feel like I have to do it because I'm here to make a difference. When it is obvious that goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. Confucius. So I guess I'll leave part three here before I move on so that I make sure I don't run out of time with my recording. Um, but But yeah, how do I want to kind of wrap this up? I want to wrap up this piece of my history with, I still feel like what I'm doing is beyond movement, but I see that in a very different way. And in part four, I am going to go into a little bit more of my history as I kind of dig into what's next. But I guess I'm specifically sharing this because I want to create a relationship with you, the listener. Maybe you did go through some of this beyond movement journey with me, or maybe it's new for you. And now that I know how much the dark occultist co-opted and stole the new age movement and really designed that, maybe we can create something that is true and is authentic and isn't just some manipulated version of some really beautiful esoteric wisdom that is hidden in these somatic practices. So, thanks for listening. And I do want to do one more little plug. I didn't do this in part two, so maybe I'll alternate back and forth with doing this. But I do want to close with, again, this entire presentation and what I'm working to do is to create Carter's Country Club and to make a difference with the children. I'm telling you my story so you understand where I'm coming from and why I want to create this. And I'm going to get into how I shifted into working with children after 20 years of working with adults. But I'd really invite you to reach out, send me an email. That's the best way to communicate with me because I have not developed a website and I still have not ventured back into social media. So that's my work email. You can contact me there. And if you feel so called, I would love to invite you to donate. You can donate to me and my family, or you can tell me that you want to donate to the kids that I work with, or donate to this larger vision of Carter's Country Club. I do believe that the government is slavery, so I will not be becoming a 501c3 and aligning with that. This is just, a private donation to myself or a private donation to this ambiguous private club of Carter's Country Club that is not exclusive but truly inclusive, and not inclusive like the buzzword, but really is including all. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.